Hello, everybody, and welcome back to ZakIsCinema. Yes, welcome back, everybody. If you are one of those people that just love talking about movies but have nobody that'll talk movies with you, well, welcome here because we are all kind of in the same boat together, so we can all talk movies here together. So, welcome. But yes, today we are going to be reviewing and discussing the new movie called The Long Walk, which came out in 2025. The Long Walk tells the story of a dystopian contest where 100 teenage boys must walk without rest under the watch of a brutal regime. Because if they stop, they die, and only one will make it to the end. So as we jump into the review and discussion for the new movie, The Long Walk, this was definitely one I was really looking forward to. I haven't read the Stephen King short story version of this story, so I was definitely interested in it. Stephen King is an author that I haven't read very much of, but I've seen a lot of movies and TV shows that are adaptations of his work, and I've loved the majority of Stephen King adaptations. It's a very cliche answer, but I think The Shining is definitely one of my favorites. It's one of those movies that really just like opened my eyes to a more psychological approach of horror, and from my experience with Stephen King adaptations, they do seem to be more of that psychological thriller horror-esque genre type of storytelling. So I was definitely looking forward to this one because it seemed slightly different than most of Stephen King's adaptations I personally am very used to, where it didn't seem full-blown horror, but had that horror vibe to it, where more so being a dystopian kind of thriller. And all the trailers and marketing for this movie just made it seem very interesting. It seemed like it had such a unique, cool initial setup to the story, so I was definitely interested in checking it out. This isn't going to be a full spoiler review, but I would definitely love to discuss a little bit more of my thoughts on the ending. So once we kind of get into that point, I'm definitely going to be talking specifics with the ending. So let's jump into the review section, starting with the positives or just the things that I enjoyed most about this movie. And right off the bat, spoilers, I guess, for my review here, I found this movie to be truly incredible and just a great theatrical experience. And I feel like it's going to be one of those movies when I think of the year of 2025, this is going to be one of those movies that just pops out in my head and that I remember this year for. You know, I'm sure it's different for people that kind of are familiar with the story, familiar with the short story, but I'm coming at it with someone who has never read this short story, but this movie to me was so much more captivating and so emotional in a good way, and way more emotional and heavy than I was really anticipating. And to me, I think it's one of those movies that balances its heavy topics, its heavy story as well, so well, where it is just so emotional, so depressing at times, but never took away from the enjoyable experience I was having when I was watching this movie. It doesn't go so far where I would never be in the mood to not rewatch this again. I think it balances those tones so well, where it is so uplifting, it can be inspiring at times, it can be very funny at times, but it can be so dark and morbid and just so depressing. A very different story, but it almost reminded me of how I feel about the Shawshank Redemption, where that story is just very heavy, dark, but also uplifting and inspiring, and one of those big emotional movies that I can go back to constantly because I get something out of it, I get something new out of it every single time I watch it. And even though it is so dark, it never goes so dark where it's just like an unenjoyable experience to kind of rewatch. So I feel like it's very similar in this movie where it's emotional. You got to be in the right headspace to sit down and really enjoy it. But I truly do look forward to rewatching this one just because of what I got out of it just on my first watch here. I love how this movie was still able to capture this big dystopian future, this dystopian world under this awful controlling government that is destroying its people around them. It felt so similar to the Hunger Games, with that similar story of this government ruling over its people, forcing the poor common folk people to compete and have a chance to get out of the hell that is their daily lives. And I think having a story like this where you have this evil government that is so controlling over its people, but still allowing them to have that kind of one small shot at a chance of freedom and to get out of the hell of their daily lives. I feel like stories like that, very similar to the Hunger Games, make it so easy to root for all the characters and also make you hate the villains so much just on a surface level. Like, even if this movie never tried to develop any of its characters or further develop the villains, you would still hate the villains and you would still be rooting for the characters. But this movie takes the time to add more to our characters, add more to the villains on top of that initial setup, so it makes you root for the characters even more and hate the villains even more. So I think just on a story and character level, this movie works so well. And even though on a surface level, a movie about a group of kids just walking over 350 miles, and even though we just kind of see the road, the empty scenery around our characters, all these rundown parts in this dystopian future, it makes this world and environment feel so real, so lived in, yet they never travel to different areas. There's not different side plots or different characters kind of weaving into the story. So I just love the world building here and how well it does it while still just focusing on the main story at hand. And I think that's the most impressive thing this movie has going for it, is where it's a movie close to that 2-hour runtime and we're just following characters walking, and I never once felt bored or uninterested or felt that parts dragged a bit at all. And I think that was kind of one of my hesitancies going into the movie, not being familiar with the story and just kind of seeing the trailer. I'm like, oh yeah, that seems very interesting. It seems like a movie that I would enjoy, but I wonder if it's going to get, repetitive or just kind of bogged down or just kind of uninteresting once you kind of get past the initial setup. But I never felt that at all. I feel like it's one of those rare, special movie theater experiences where everybody in my theater was just so engaged with it, and one of those movies that literally just washes over me where I forget that I'm sitting in a theater watching a movie. I lose sense of time is the best way I could describe it, and that's how I felt watching the movie. And another favorite part of this movie for me is the group of characters we get. We follow 50 characters that are starting this long walk. So I was kind of interested to see, would there be a main character? Would there be a group of main characters? Would we try to focus on every single one of them? But we kind of narrow it down to 2 main leads in this movie. And, you get small groups throughout, which is very interesting, but we mostly follow the perspectives and dialogue of Ray and Peter in the movie, but I still found myself enjoying all the other side characters as well. And I like that throughout the story, we see these characters slowly work out their differences, have disagreements, have fights with each other, find things to bond over and get closer together. We see these group of kids supporting each other, fighting with each other, and then maybe gaining a new perspective on each other as well. And it really focused on that bond that these characters have and that shared bond experience by going through something so traumatic like this. It really gave me a very similar feeling to some of my favorite war movies where, you might have some piece of shit characters, you might have some characters that don't always agree with each other or get along with each other, but they're, at the end of the day, they're there to support each other, and you really feel that here. It was like a mix of the Hunger Games with like a very realistic war movie, and just that bond and shared experience that all these characters have. And I like that in the movie, even though we get some characters that you're not initially rooting for or do some shitty things that make you really hate them, they never go too far to where they're worse than the villain. And I feel like with the majority of the piece of shit characters in this long walk, they eventually come back around, or our characters kind of help bring out the good side in them. So I love that you just get all these complex and different characters that you really feel for and care for, and there's never a character that just like annoys you, or you're just waiting for them to stop walking so they get shot in the head or anything like that. So even the worst of them, you're still in a way kind of rooting for them, which I thought was such a unique balance while having all these different characters and all these different perspectives going on as well. And the nice thing about this movie is it has such a nice, interesting initial setup to the movie where all these kids get chosen for this long walk, and you have to be walking at a consistent pace. You can't go below 3 miles per hour, and the last one walking wins all this money and wins a wish that they can wish for at the end. And that's basically it. That's basically the story. So then the story then allows the rest of the movie to be just world building, character development, all delivered through dialogue and character driven actions as well. And I feel like that helps for when the characters start dying, even the shitty ones, you feel for those characters, and then it makes you feel for the surviving characters as well. So it's really just a story about these characters and these characters' lives, and that intriguing initial setup makes you want to finish the movie, see who wins, see how this story plays out. But then the rest of the movie, we're just focusing on the characters, so then you actually care about the ending so much. Another thing that really stuck out to me was the violence in this movie. It's not like an overly graphic war movie, but it feels like that, where the violence is sporadic but consistent enough, and it really sticks out to you just because the couple of flashes of violence that we get sprinkled throughout the movie are so visceral, graphic, and gnarly, so that when characters are dying, you really feel it. It shocks you every single time, and I feel like it kind of helps it stay away from that repetitive factor where, you might be thinking like, oh, they're just walking and then slowly get picked off one by one, but you feel it when a character dies, not only because of the surviving members' reactions, but just because it's not like an action movie, so when you get that action and violence, it really does stick with you and really hits hard, and I think that's what the movie was going with. It's one of those movies that had characters stick out to me, had the story stick out to me, had the premise stick out to me, and just one of those theater experiences where I just felt so gripped and so captivated. And I feel like it's been a while since I saw a movie like this, especially this year, where I feel like it's been very up and down and a bit sporadic, but it's just one of those movies that got me thinking about it long after I finished watching it here. But yeah, let's jump into my mixed aspects for the movie. So these mixed are not really positive, not really negative. I feel like they're kind of unsure right now. I feel like I kind of need to rewatch it, and they're just some things that I'm not too sure how to feel. But first, from my understanding of the short story, is that it's like a raffle. These kids get chosen, and then they go and start the long walk. And then in the short story, as soon as the first character dies, that's when all the other characters realize like, oh shit, this isn't just a competition where when you lose, you just get sent home. This is life or death. And then that's when they realize it. But by the point that they realize it, it's way too late because they're already in it and now can't stop. So I feel like it adds that level of intensity to the movie. However, in this movie, I don't think they really, unless I missed something, I don't think they really established that if the characters knew it was life or death or didn't know until the first character gets shot and killed. Because when the first person gets shot and killed, they're all distraught. There's this level of panic and scared feeling in the environment in these group of characters, but none of them start freaking out to the point being like, oh shit, like I didn't know they were gonna fucking shoot us. So I was just a little confused with that. Again, not that it's a positive or negative, but I wish they leaned more into what the short story was doing where the characters didn't know. So then that way when it happens in the movie, it adds a whole new level of intensity. It adds more anticipation anticipation for our group of characters here and just adds a whole new element to the characters, realizing they're locked in and stuck, and if they try to get out, they're going to die. So I just felt like that was a bit of a missed opportunity not to establish that, and if that's what they were going for, I don't think they did a good job at conveying that specific plot point. And to me, my biggest mixed here is with the ending. I am just not too sure how to feel, and I feel like I need to sit on it a little bit more. I need to rewatch it to see how I really feel, because I love parts about it. I'm not sure how I feel parts about it. I wish it could have gone a little bit different way, but throughout the story, we find out that one of our main characters of Ray, he is kind of our lead here alongside Pete, but mostly Ray, where if he wins this competition, one of his wishes that he wants is to take one of the Major's guns and shoot the Major, because we find out all these awful things the Major did, and specifically did to Pete's father by killing his father right in front of him and his mom. So he has reason to do that, and he kind of wants to do that not only to get revenge on the Major, but to also help inspire change in a way by showing the common people that you could push back on this controlling government. However, throughout the movie, we find out that if Pete wins, he kind of wants to do something similar, but in a more positive way, where it's not about revenge, but inspiring change and trying to help people. So they both have their motives of helping people and inspiring change, but both want to go about it in very different ways. And then at the end, we obviously get Pete and Ray, the last two surviving members. And at the end, Ray decides to sacrifice himself and allow Pete to win, because he knows they both want the same thing, but he believes that Pete is going to go about it in a different way and be more positive and be more helpful than Ray could ever be. So that plays out, and then Pete wins, and he sees Ray get shot. He's all distraught, he's all upset, and then he starts to make his wish of getting the gun and ends up shooting the Major. And then as soon as that happens, it almost goes into this dream-like scenario where Pete is slowly walking off, and we see a dark shadow figure in the background who I think is supposed to be Ray, if I'm not mistaken. But then you don't see any of the people in the street that were just there, and as he's walking, nobody is there. So it's kind of implying that as soon as he shot the Major, I assume all his troops gunned him down, and that's him dying, going off, and he's in his afterlife now. Like, I'm just not even sure how I feel about it, because I love how that ending is so dark. It's a little bit ambiguous. It is not a happy ending. It's gut-wrenching. It's so sad. It's so depressing. It's depressing seeing this hopeful character of Pete make such a dark decision, because when he was put in that place at the end, he kind of goes back on what he was talking about, because he was put in a position and he wanted revenge. The long walk almost kind of destroyed him and made him go down a path that probably many people do in this dystopian future. But at the same time, it's kind of hopeful in a way, because maybe Pete did this and went back on what he really wanted to do. But you never know, maybe he did inspire change and showed people to push back, and he sacrificed himself for Ray's message at the end of the day. So it's like so complex with that. It's like a morally gray area. Just you feel for Pete because you didn't want him to do that, but you understand why he would do that, and you hope that it inspired change at the end of the day. Just at the same time, for me, this movie is so dark, so depressing, just full of gut-wrenching scenes that I just selfishly wanted to see Pete not do that, and then maybe have like a montage of him helping out all of the other boys, like families, and really inspiring this change in the way that he wanted to, and the way he was talking about. But at the same time, that is a very cliche ending that you could kind of see coming. So I like how it kind of subverted your expectations in this dark way that you're not really too sure how to feel about. So I love that for that. But at the same time, I wish it went on a more hopeful note just after the experience we just all went through together. So that's why I'm feeling like I'm not too sure how I feel about it, but it's definitely one I need to sit on. But again, I could throw that that in the positives as well, that it's not just an ending that I know exactly how I feel about it and I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good ending. I know exactly how I feel about it. But it's one of these movies, one of these endings that just got you thinking long after you watched it. It's one of those endings you can have discussions about it. You can disagree or agree with parts of it. You can disagree or agree with the whole thing that our character of Peter did. So I really do love it for that. But at the same time, I wish it went a little bit more hopeful, but I get why it didn't. And from what I understand from the short story, it's a little bit different. So I again like that they didn't just play out the short story. I bet that was nice for people that like the short story and wanted something maybe a little bit different, or, you know, you go into it not expecting that type of ending. So I would say overall, I think this is one of the best movies of 2025. It's a movie with a great, simple story that takes time to build the world throughout. It builds the world through character development and dialogue. It's thrilling, emotional, it's heartbreaking, and has an ending that is so complex and morally gray that has you thinking about it after you watched it and allows you to have those types of conversations. So for my rating for this movie, this is definitely a movie I would want to buy at full price, buy it on 4K so I can add to my collection and so I can rewatch it and show it to people who have never seen it. So that's about it. You guys have my thoughts here on The Long Walk. Please let me know what you think of this movie and give me that point of reference. Did you read the short story? Did you not? If you did read it, do you like this ending better? Do you like the story better? Or do you like the short story a little bit better? Are you with me on my thoughts and feelings around the ending? Do you lean more positive? Do you lean more negative? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this movie, but that's about it. I appreciate anybody watching my videos. It does mean a lot, so thank you so much. And yeah, look forward to more ZakIsCinema coming very soon.